You ever notice how the moment you decide to improve your own home somebody else suddenly steps in like they own the place, like they signed the mortgage, like they pay the taxes? Because that's exactly how it feels when an HOA decides they don't like what you're doing. And here is the crazy part: most homeowners don't even realize how weak that power really is. They just feel the pressure, the letters, the threats, the fines, the legal sounding words, and they freeze. And that's what HOAs count on: fear, confusion and silence. But let me tell you right now, if you're watching this and you live under an HOA, you need to hear this, because there is one area where HOA authority falls apart faster than anywhere else, and that's architectural changes, exterior modifications, the very thing they pretend to control the hardest. This all started with me wanting to update the outside of my house, not to show off, not to break rules, not to tank property values, just to modernize it, make it cleaner, newer, more efficient, the kind of upgrade that makes a neighborhood look better. But the second construction started, it was like a switch flipped. Letters started showing up, not friendly ones, not "hey, let's talk about this" ones, but hard, cold violation notices, bold text demanding immediate compliance, threatening daily fines, legal action, liens, court. And once you see those words hit the page, your heart drops, because that's how they hook you. They sound official, they sound final, they sound like authority. And for a moment I felt that pressure too, because that's human. But then something didn't sit right, because I remembered something important. I own this house, my name is on the deed, not theirs. So instead of panicking, I slowed down. I pulled out the HOA documents, the bylaws, the architectural guidelines, the CC and RS, all the stuff nobody reads until it's too late. And that's when I saw it: vague language everywhere. Architectural harmony, community aesthetics, board discretion, phrases that sound powerful but don't actually say anything. And that right there is where HOAs get into trouble, because courts don't enforce vibes, they enforce written authority. But HOAs know most homeowners never challenge that, they never ask, what does this actually mean, where does it say that specifically, what statute gives you this power? They just comply. So I checked my timeline. I had submitted a request weeks before the work started, and they never responded. And most homeowners don't know this, but silence matters in many states. Unreasonable delay equals approval, or at least kills enforcement. Then I looked around the neighborhood, and this part really opened my eyes. There were other houses with similar exterior changes, similar colors, similar siding, similar upgrades, some approved, some ignored, some just never challenged. Selective enforcement, another fatal mistake. And at that moment something shifted inside me, because I realized this wasn't about rules, it was about control. HOAs don't like architectural changes because they expose inconsistency, they expose favoritism, they expose lazy enforcement. So instead of arguing emotionally, I responded calmly, legally. I asked simple questions: point to the rule, explain the delay, explain why similar homes exist, explain why my modification harms the community. And that's when the tone changed. Suddenly the emails weren't aggressive, suddenly they wanted meetings, suddenly words like compromise and discussion showed up. Because they realized something: I wasn't scared anymore. And once fear disappears, HOA power evaporates. Here is something most people don't understand: HOAs aren't governments, they can't make law, they can only enforce what's clearly written, and even then it must be reasonable, consistent and lawful. Architectural control.
The projections leave no room for error, but the risks are too high. We need a contingency plan. We'll mitigate them.
HOA documents are anything but clear. Courts hate vague rules, judges don't like unchecked discretion, and they really don't like selective enforcement. So when an HOA walks into court saying we denied this because we didn't like it or it didn't feel harmonious, they lose, and they know that. That's why they threaten so hard before it ever gets there. That's why they rely on letters, fines, and fear tactics. In my case, the fines vanished, the threat stopped, and quietly without announcement the HOA updated their architectural guidelines. And here is the lesson for anyone watching this: if you're thinking about changing your home's exterior, don't let fear stop you, let knowledge guide you.
Yeah?
HOAs survive on the idea that you don't know your rights. Once you do, the game changes completely. And that's the truth they never
Thank
want
you for your
homeowners
input.
to understand.
Let's move forward with the proposal, as discussed.
So instead of arguing emotionally, I responded calmly. Legally, I asked simple questions: point to the rule, explain the delay, explain why similar homes exist, explain why my modification harms the community. And the wild part was they couldn't answer, not clearly, not confidently, not without circling back to the same vague phrases they had already used. And that's when I knew this whole thing was built on smoke. Because real authority doesn't dodge questions, real authority doesn't rely on tone, intimidation, or repetition. Real authority points to something solid, and HOAs rarely have that when it comes to architectural control. That's when the tone started shifting slowly, at first subtle little changes, shorter emails, softer language, more delays on their side, less urgency. Suddenly the fines stopped increasing, suddenly the deadlines became flexible, suddenly meetings were suggested. And you have to understand something about HOAs: they only do that when they feel exposed. Because the moment a homeowner stops reacting emotionally and starts responding with clarity, the whole dynamic flips. Fear is the fuel HOAs run on, and once you cut that off, the engine stalls. I could feel it in every interaction. They were no longer talking down to me, they were talking around me, they were trying to regain footing, and that told me everything I needed to know. See, most people think HOAs win in court all the time, but that's not true. They win before court, they win by scaring people into compliance, they win because most homeowners never push back far enough to expose the weaknesses. Architectural disputes are where those weaknesses show up the fastest. Because judges want specifics, they want clarity, they want consistency, and HOAs almost never deliver that. You can't walk into a courtroom and say we denied this because it didn't feel right. You can't say it didn't match the vibe of the neighborhood. You can't say the board didn't like it. Courts don't enforce taste, they enforce rules. And once you understand that, you realize something powerful: this whole system is built on homeowners not knowing where the line is. So I kept documenting everything, every delay, every contradiction, every house with a similar modification, every email where they shifted their explanation. I wasn't aggressive, I wasn't loud, I was calm and methodical, and that scares HOAs more than anything. Because calm homeowners are dangerous to bad enforcement. Eventually the fines were quietly removed, no announcement, no apology, just gone. And that's another HOA tactic: they never admit fault, they just retreat. Then the meeting happened and you could feel the energy shift. They weren't there to fight, they were there to close the issue, to make it go away. And that's when I realized something important: this was never about my house, this was about setting an example, and once that example backfired, they wanted out. HOAs often target one homeowner to scare the rest, and when that homeowner doesn't fold, the entire strategy collapses. After that, things went quiet, too quiet, and then a few weeks later the architectural guidelines were updated, more specific, more defined, more limited. And that's how you know you were right, because they don't fix what isn't broken. They didn't update those rules to help homeowners, they updated them to protect themselves from losing again. And that's the part nobody talks about. Every time a homeowner stands their ground, it changes the system just a little. Now here is the part one really want you to understand if you're listening to this and you're dealing with an HOA or you're thinking about making an exterior change. HOAs are not all-powerful. They are constrained by law, by their own documents, and by reasonableness, and architectural control is one of the easiest areas to challenge because it exposes vague language, selective enforcement, and delay. But you have to approach it the right way. Not angry, not defensive, not scared, but informed. Read your documents, don't skim them, read them, understand what they actually say, and more importantly what they don't say. Document timelines. Silence matters, delay matters, inconsistency matters. Look around your neighborhood, take note of similar modifications because consistency is everything. Ask precise questions, don't rant, don't accuse, just ask for clarification and watch how quickly things unravel. And remember this: HOAs are not judges, they don't get the final say no matter how much they act like they do. Their authority stops where the law stops. Most of them know this and they count on you not knowing it. So the next time you get a violation letter threatening fines over paint, siding, windows, solar panels, doors, fences, anything like that, pause, breathe, and ask yourself one question. Can they actually enforce this, or are they hoping I won't ask? Because once you start asking, the game changes. And that is the truth HOAs never want homeowners to hear.